Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing well out there and certainly having yourselves a fantastic start to your day and a great start to your work week. I got you a big update on what's going on with Hurricane Lee this morning. We'll discuss how he's doing, what he's looking like. We'll talk about the latest information from the hurricane hunters, the latest information from the National Hurricane Center. We'll talk about the GFS, the European, and the hurricane models on this, talk about the ensembles, the steering currents, everything in this video. And unfortunately, there has been some tick west in model guidance. So this, of course, means that this system could affect areas like New England, Maine, and of course, it's going to affect our neighbors in Southeast Canada. So we need to talk about this. We need to break it down. We're getting certainly much closer now to where all these ticks mean a heck of a lot more than they did probably 2, 3, 4, 5 days ago. So we need to watch all these ticks, and making these videos are just as important now more than ever, just because we're closer in that long-term future of Lee. I don't even think it's right to even call it a long-term future anymore, as this will be making direct impacts to somebody by the end of this work week into this weekend. So we're going to break it all down for you folks, and we'll give you your daily forecast for your Monday, and we'll keep you covered here. So if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Of course, we know what happened on this day 23 years ago. It was an awful day for this country. And certainly all of our thoughts and prayers are for everybody that was directly impacted. And I feel like everybody in the country was impacted, right? So we will never forget what happened on that day. So definitely thinking about that as we kind of make our way through our Monday today. So I have not had a chance to answer any comments from the last 3 videos, and I do apologize. I have a lot of catching up to do. It's a very, very busy life I have, and not complaining. It's just a jam-packed busy life, and I miss a lot of things, and I've definitely been behind lately. So I do apologize for any prayer requests I've missed. I'm going to read every single one of them this afternoon at work when I get called up. So definitely please don't hold any hard feelings against me. I definitely will catch up with everything later today. So let's get rolling. So this is Hurricane Lee on your screen. Obviously, Lee has not gotten any better since yesterday evening's video, really. Lee was definitely getting stronger when we made the video yesterday, and actually got a cleared out eye to him. But this morning, there's no real cleared out eye anymore. Okay, it's actually lost that real clear eye signature to Lee. This indicates that Lee is just maintaining itself. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily weakening. If it is weakening, it's not going to be about a whole lot, as we are expecting Lee to strengthen back into a Category 4 hurricane. But Lee definitely probably got stronger overnight, but then this morning, just kind of maintaining himself. You got the hot towers firing up, which means you got these stronger updrafts and this whites and pinks right here, which means this is still just firing heavy convection, tall convection, strong convection, and still has that symmetrical look to it. Now, Lee is definitely getting broader now. It's becoming a much larger hurricane. The wind field is expanding, but that doesn't necessarily mean the winds are increasing. It just means the wind field is expanding, which is certainly even more dangerous because more people get affected by this. But as of right now, nobody is, because it's not impacting a landmass. So this is Lee this morning. Another way to look at this is the water vapor loop. And as you can tell, I mean, this thing is expanding. Massive, large outflow to this. You got the cirrus clouds and moisture from Lee expanding way far north of the actual center of the storm. So I really think this is going to end up getting even larger at some point. Now, just because you see these clouds way up here doesn't mean you're getting hurricane or even tropical storm force conditions. All the worst conditions are, right in the immediate area of the immediate hurricane, right? But this thing is really expanding, and we were expecting this, and then we will expect this to make that turn. But as you can tell, you got the eye kind of showing up here, and then it gets blurred out in the latest, kind of the last frames of this morning. So this thing is just kind of maintaining itself. I would argue maybe it's weakened a little bit this morning, but we'll see what happens today. I would say it only has another, maybe 48 hours to really strengthen. Maybe 2.5 days. So we'll see what Lee does, and then after that, it'll make that northern turn, and then all eyes will be on Lee after that for any kind of threat to a landmass. But, you know, Lee's just kind of maintaining himself this morning. Nothing too crazy. But the latest information from the National Hurricane Center, we'll see if we get an update, and we don't. It's a 120-mile-per-hour hurricane. That's a major hurricane, Category 3, 950 millibar central pressure, and moving northwest at 7 miles per hour. So not west-northwest anymore. It's moving actually northwest. We'll see if this jogs just straight west at some point over the next 2 days. But either way, he is moving very slow at this point. Not at a crawl, but pretty slow. We do have this area of interest we need to watch. This has been bumped up from a 40 to a 50% chance to develop. All eyes will be on this after we're done with Lee. A lot of eyes are already on it. You're going to see a lot of hype around this threat right here. This has a chance to be Nigel, our next name. It's the end name in the hurricane list of names of this year. Nigel is the next name. So you'll see a lot of crazy hype on this, but you know, we're here to give you the facts, and we will discuss this probably more so tonight. We discussed it somewhat last night. If you want to tune into that, not a whole lot's changed, but we'll try to do it again tonight in the video. But we keep going and we look at the hurricane hunters as far as what's going on, and they just found a 949 central pressure, so this is not weakened. In fact, it's strengthened 1 millibar, so it's a sub 950 millibar storm. So regardless of the actual structure, it losing that eye right here, that cleared out dry eye, I mean, latest recon data that's literally flying through the storm right now is indicating a 949 millibar storm. So it's actually a little stronger. Remember, the lower this millibar number drops, the stronger the storm system. So they're finding pretty intense winds in it too. What is that in the white colors down here? I mean, that's over 100 knots. So that's well over 100 miles, 115 miles per hour, mile per hour readings. But of course, this just shows over 100 knots. We don't know if that's 105, 110 knots. I would have to pull up the other stuff for that, and I don't have that on your screen. But regardless, this does indicate it pretty much a maintaining or maybe slightly stronger storm. So latest information from the National Hurricane Center. You see the cone making that abrupt turn north now. I mean, it's going to make that turn north, and it's going to pick up speed big time. He's going to go from just crawling out there to, you know, booking it at about a decent clip. So Bermuda's still technically in this cone, but right on the edge of it, we still need to watch Bermuda, because little small ticks east could really dramatically change the impacts for Bermuda. So it's definitely something to watch. One thing I want to also watch is, you see this orange, and then you see this kind of brownish color right in here. I want to watch to see if this orange color, or some people might call this yellow, but this orange color right here really expands. And that means that the tropical storm force conditions really expand. So the area in orange is, if you read down here, current wind field estimate, tropical storm force conditions, and hurricane force conditions. So we'll see if this expands. The tropical storm force conditions really expand. I expect it to. Okay, as it kind of merges with with a trough out here and really begins to lose its tropical characteristics, and when that happens, it basically means that it's almost merging with a cold front. Okay, I read a quick question. It popped up on my notifications last night, and I saw that question. It like merges with a cold front. It really just it loses the core. The core changes with these systems, and I'll talk more on that probably in tonight's video when we have a good gauge on how this process will work. But when that happens, these systems become very large. Now the winds typically drop, but the wind field expands. So we'll try to discuss why it does that in this evening's video, but we are pretty high in confidence that is exactly what's going to happen. But this will maintain major hurricane status, Category 3 or higher, all the way through, I would say, Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, and this will begin to weaken below Category 3 status probably sometime late this work week. But moving at about 7 miles per hour, not very quick out there, that's for sure. So you look at another way to look at this, which is Zoom Earth. This helps us see what the National Hurricane Center is saying that this could be at different times of the day. So it's saying that Lee should be a 130 mile per hour hurricane category, back to Category 4 status by sometime this afternoon. Should maintain that all the way through tomorrow afternoon, and then I think this is when this begins the process of making that turn north, one, and then two, slowly weakening, and then maybe weakening at a pretty decent clip. Sometime while it's making that turn, and then maybe it maintains itself somewhat. But then by the time we get into Saturday 2 a.m. in the morning, this should just be a Category 1 80-mile-per-hour hurricane based off the National Hurricane Center. But that doesn't mean just because this thing is drastically weakened that the impacts just drastically go down. The impact zone is going to actually expand. And I know I've been said this about 3 or 4 times. We're going to be able to talk a heck of a lot more on that when we kind of know the exact position of the system, which of course we never know the exact position, but we will have a very good idea. Will the center be more so over here? Will it be more so over here? Will it be right in line with the cone? That's what we got to figure out. We'll keep going here, and it shows this well. You see how basically how broad already, this is the center of the storm right here where this white dot is. But you see how large the tropical storm force winds field, the tropical storm force wind field is expanded out from the center. That purple area is over a 90% chance to see tropical storm force conditions, which is basically winds exceeding 39 miles per hour or higher. And this expands pretty far out. And I mean, even Bermuda, all right, it's going to be close enough. You're in that, 40 to 50% chance to see tropical storm force conditions. A 1 minute average is what this little graphic stands for. But I mean, even look at southeast areas of Mass. I mean, getting close to Rhode Island. You got Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, Cape Cod. You are now in this little area. It's coming close to Nova Scotia. Now, this only goes out to 2 a.m. Saturday. So, of course, as we get further in time, this prediction at tropical storm force conditions will shift further north, right? So I expect areas of southern New England to begin to get into this, but as of now, a 5 to 10% chance between now and 2 a.m. Saturday, this coming Saturday, to see tropical storm force conditions. But like I said, this will change as we get more into that time period, right? So, or a little bit further out is what I'm trying to say. A little struggling with talking this morning. That's what happens when you make 2 videos a day, and not every video is going to come out perfect. I can tell you that. But the wind field is large. I mean, look at this. It goes from here to here. I mean, that's hundreds of miles. So it's a very large wind field. So let's take a look at some model guidance. Okay, and we're now close enough to where we can just start it off in this geographical panel. We don't have to start off in the Caribbean anymore. So here it comes creeping up on your screen. We'll start out Wednesday morning, still a powerful hurricane. It begins to lose some intensity as it makes that turn north. We get into Thursday morning. We get into Friday morning. This makes that close past the Bermuda, but misses Bermuda to the west, which is good news, but I think it will be definitely close enough to get some tropical storm force conditions. I'm not going to guarantee it, but I'm pretty positive that Bermuda, you guys are going to see some tropical storm warnings out there for sure. Tropical storm watches first, and then tropical storm warnings probably in the next, I would say, 24 hours. But I might be wrong. We'll see. And then it really begins to fill that trough, and then it misses the first trough. But at this point, it's still expanding in size because it's moving north, and it's just beginning to really just lose those tropical characteristics. And a lot of the reason is because it starts to get a lot of dry air from that trough, from all those lower dew points, that really gets into this storm. And typically when that happens, the real structure, that hurricane structure that you typically see, it loses that hurricane look to it, and it gets really strung out, and it almost, a lot of times, the dry air makes it look like a half a cane, which is just a hurricane cut in half. So don't want to talk too much on that yet until we kind of know exactly how that's going to unfold, but let's keep this going. We get into Saturday morning, and I mean, here comes this rain shield starting to make its way into southeast Mass, starting to make its way into Nova Scotia, and then we get in, and then I want you to notice, watch how this looks like it might start to head out to sea. Then it makes that jolt back due north, and then it ticks northwest. I'll tell you exactly why it does that. And then it just moves due northwest, and you're thinking, oh no, this is heading right towards like Boston. But it kind of tweaks back and forth. But I would say it's moving more so north-northwest. And look at this. This is pretty large. You got impacts coming up on Saturday afternoon, September the 16th, anywhere from all of Nova Scotia. You got this rain shield, and this area in yellow, this is tropical storm force conditions, maybe even hurricane force conditions based off this run. I mean, we're starting to get close, guys. It's 141 hours. This is this coming Saturday afternoon. This is bringing an intense wind field onshore, unfortunately, on the latest model guidance from the Euro. And I can tell you, I'm about to show you the GFS. It's not much different. They're coming in agreement. It's like when one ticks, the other one ticks with it. So that typically means these models are coming together. But this is still a 964 millibar system, if this is correct. Still a hurricane, moving very close to landmass. Okay, and here it comes. We start to get into Saturday evening. All right, and then we get into Saturday night. At this point, it's the middle of the night. It does not make landfall like in Cape Cod, but it comes up, gets tucked in between New England, south of Maine, and Nova Scotia. And here it comes. I mean, at this point, you stop it here. This is impacting Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, bringing this entire rain shield. Now, way up here, I mean, you're probably not getting consistent 40, 30, 50 mile per hour winds yet. But this continues just to move right in, and it just kind of curls right here, and then eventually technically makes landfall that would technically be in New Brunswick, because the actual center of low pressure goes between western Nova Scotia and the down east areas of Maine and makes landfall here. This will bring impacts to everybody in this region. Southeast Canada, just in general. New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, what is that? Cape Breton Island. So we just got to figure out exactly where this center makes landfall. But it does show it making connection with landmass for sure Sunday morning sometime, but this will bring impacts. And guys, if you're wondering what kind of impacts, you keep saying impacts, so what are you talking about, Mitch? Well, we're going to be able to get much more detailed on that here in the next, I would say, 2.5 days. So stick with me, and I promise you we'll talk. And I will actually show you what the Euro is showing as far as a wind field here in a second. Latest GFS, unfortunately, it's not much different. It feels this trough. You see how you got this gradient right here between rain and white? That is our cold front with the associated upper trough. It feels that. It changes the characteristics of this tropical system we get into Friday evening. And unfortunately, the latest GFS, the one that literally just ran this morning, does do kind of the same thing as the Euro. Brings this intense wind field Saturday morning, September the 16th, right into areas of southeast Mass, and everybody included in that area, which Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, so Nantucket. So you guys, even in Rhode Island, even in the very far eastern tip of Long Island, you guys are getting a little bit of some impacts. Regardless, this is going to create a lot of wind, even for areas that don't even see a drop of rain. This will definitely create some breezy conditions. I say a lot of rain. I'm not talking a lot of wind. I'm not talking about like hurricanes, force winds way outside the hurricane. But anytime you see these isobars really get really close to each other, tight gradient, you're getting some strong winds. And of course, you still got a tropical system. Even though it might be post-tropical, it's still a tropical system. So this continues, and look at that. Look at that. It looks like it's heading out to sea, then it moves north, and then it just makes a jog almost west-northwest, and just let's hope this doesn't happen. This is this Saturday afternoon would bring heavy impacts, all right, to eastern Mass, even to eastern areas of New Hampshire, and this makes landfall right into the down east areas of Maine. Would bring impacts in Nova Scotia too, but would actually shift the heavier impacts further into the U.S. It would miss more so areas like Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and these places. But it does make that turn and eventually would impact these areas. But man, this makes a landfall in the down east areas of Maine. Still is a strong system, a strong storm. All right, so it's just something we need to watch. And if you look at the HAF model, this does not go all the way out to the time frame we want it to, with showing landfall somewhere. But what I want you to watch is this is the wind field right here. This is wind speeds and knots. Don't focus too much on how fast they are, but I want you to watch as this colored area right here really expands. It gets larger. You see how much larger it gets? Yes, the intensity drops off, but you get a huge wind field that expands, and this kind of green, yellowish area, that's winds pushing 50 to 45 knots, which I mean is over, 50 to 60 miles per hour and mile per hour readings. And this, I mean, this is not probably sustained winds, but I mean, this is wind gusts, and I mean, this is pretty large. I mean, you're feeling some breezy conditions even in the coastal regions of the mid-Atlantic. So this wind field really gets large, and that is concerning. The latest information from the European ensembles, I mean, it likes anywhere from Maine. There's even some stragglers making its way into southern New England. It really likes southeast Canada, and everybody included in southeast Canada, Nova Scotia, even some go on to hit Newfoundland. It moves through Nova Scotia and then affects Prince Edward Island, Cape Breton Island, New Brunswick. So at this point, we are no longer confident, which I don't know if we were ever really confident. I think we were very confident this wasn't going to affect like the mid-Atlantic and the southeast, but we are now pretty confident this is not just going to easy like Sunday morning go on out to sea, unfortunately. So we look at the GFS ensemble, and this does connect landfall also anywhere from Maine through Nova Scotia and everybody in between. Most of these members hit landmass here, so confidence is higher than ever that this is going to affect this region. And we look at the wind field off the European. Look how large it is. Okay, this is very large. I'm not trying to freak anybody out, but I mean, you do have, the wind field that makes its way on the latest Euro. This is not a forecast, it's just a model run. And I mean, this is wind gusts, not sustained winds, but you got, 70, 80 mile per hour wind gusts showing up on like Cape Cod and, Newfoundland. I'm sorry. Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. You got very strong, stout northerly, northeasterly flow blasting into Boston at this point, just because you got the flow moving like this. And then look at these strong winds up against all the coastal regions. I mean, Rhode Island, areas of even Connecticut, Long Island, up here to the coastal regions of Maine. Apologize. That sneeze actually connected that time. But you got breezy conditions moving into Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and this eventually just flat out brings this nasty, heavy wind field right inland. And you got tropical storm to hurricane force conditions from the coastal regions of southern New England all the way up into Maine, all the way into Nova Scotia. This brings very strong winds as we get into this weekend into New Brunswick and, Prince Edward Island, even eventually Cape Breton Island. Okay. So yeah, it's, unfortunately, that's why we monitor this. That's why we don't wait, drop a video and then 3 days later drop another video. This continues to tick, but I can tell you, the models have really came together overnight and this morning that, man, this could, make landfall even in the U.S. But we still got time, okay? But I can tell you, once we get closer to these time periods, confidence begins to really increase. So we'll do this again. We'll continue to do it. The area you see in orange, that is high pressure. The blue, that is low pressure. All right, the current around both of these features are different. So we all know that Lee is one giant low pressure. That's Margot out here. She's a low pressure too. All right, so Lee is, obviously a strong low pressure. Lee being influenced by this subtropical ridge in the orange, which is why it's not moving due north right now. Eventually, this trough kind of creates a weakness to this ridge, and this ridge doesn't go away, it just shifts north. And you see this white area right in here? That is a weakness in the pattern. So with Lee being a stronger storm, we know that stronger storms want to always move north. They want to gain latitude. So as soon as it sees that weakness, I mean, it's gone. It almost abruptly turns north, and it's moving along, right? So if we stop it right here, we know that with low pressure, the flow is going like this, okay? With high pressure, the flow is going like this around high pressure, okay? Two different flows, right? So you can already tell kind of what's going on here, right? If you stop it right here, say, well, this is going to go right in between, get steered right in there, and then make landfall right in here. And that's exactly what it does eventually. But I want you to keep in mind that this high pressure is always either weakening in strength or strengthening in strength. That makes sense. And it's always moving one way or the other. Same thing with a trough. A trough is either amplifying or either it's weakening, and it's also shifting one way or the other. Okay, so you get this all back off your screen and you keep rolling here. One thing to note is Lee completely misses this trough. So this trough is not able to kick this out. And remember those arrows I just drew? If it was, it would, try to push it out to sea, or at least work against this high pressure to keep this away from land. Well, you keep this going, you think, well, Lee's starting to kind of jog north-northeast. And that would make sense because it looks like this high pressure is moving away. Well, what happens here is this trough completely disappears. It's no longer a factor. And then look how you start to see this orange shade right here begin to build back in. That is the ridge of high pressure building back over. And the darker it gets, the stronger it is. The stronger it is, the more it influences the wind pattern around it. So you keep this going and look how this builds right on top of Lee. Okay, we don't want to see that. So even though Lee is trying to fight against this ridge, looking for weakness all day long, it don't work because this thing really strengthens right over Newfoundland. All right, right over areas of Nova Scotia. So therefore, this is why you see that? You see that little jog northwest? Keep your eyes right here on Lee. See that little jog northwest? That is why it does that. I mean, it moves north-northwest. The reason it does that is because this high pressure is amplifying right over this region, strengthening. So Lee cannot just move right over this way. Okay, Lee pretty much is forced because of the current around this high pressure is like this. All right, Lee is forced to not necessarily go like due west. Okay, because you got to think with such a stronger storm, like I said, they're always trying to move north. Okay, but it does force Lee to make that tick north-northwest, and eventually this high pressure is just way too strong and eventually connects with landmass and makes that landfall. And that's a kind of a terrible arrow right there. But one thing to note here is this high pressure does begin to shift back east. Therefore, Lee's able to sort of kind of make that turn northeast eventually, but it's too late. This is already plowing over land. So yeah. The trough is not really a factor. It does not look like it's going to be much of a factor. Now, this cold front associated with it will still be there and will help aid in Lee losing those tropical characteristics. But and just the fact that it's moving further north in the colder waters, it loses that. It really loses that warm core that it has. But man, this ridge building on top of it, that means everything. Okay, it just forces this to really. Now, if we could get this trough right here to amplify quicker, okay, this would help aid in working against that ridge. But I just think that Lee is going to miss both troughs, inevitably. So let's talk about what's going to happen weather-wise for today. Speaking of that trough, here it comes. You see the drier air surging down to the lower 48. That is ultimately the trough that will try to have a factor on Lee, but ultimately does not. This is the trough that misses Lee. You got a lot of showers and storm action out there this morning. Nothing really severe, but you still got a moist air mass that will eventually get cleared out over the next 24 hours in the northeast. But you certainly got a lot of activity ongoing. If you look at the radar this morning, I mean, it's raining. You're waking up to a very soggy Monday morning out here in the south central U.S. areas of the high plains. A lot of rain falling in eastern Colorado. A lot of rain falling in Chicago, northern Illinois, southeast Iowa. You got an area of storms working its way southeast through the Dakotas and northern Minnesota. You got a lot of shower and heavy rain activity in the northeast. There's a lot going on as far as rain, but nothing too crazy. Now, the Storm Prediction Center, you just got areas of a general risk, but you do have this bigger slight risk down here. That's a level 2 out of 5. We will watch for some severe weather down here today. There is a tornado threat, 2% risk in the Midland region of a tornado within 25 miles in any given location. Let's watch out for that. There's a 15% risk of winds exceeding 50 knots or higher. That is 55 to 60 miles per hour. And then the hail threat. You got a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger with some of these storms. We expect a flow to support maybe some supercells that eventually kind of grow upscale into just a cluster of storms. There is a slight risk in here in Texas and a slight risk in southern New England. That means there's at least a 15% chance of flash flood guidance being met. So be careful with some heavy rain. There is not a lot going on as far as watches and warnings. We got some dense fog advisories ahead of this boundary moving in. You got some dense fog advisories in Virginia, West Virginia, and North Carolina also. Flood watches up for areas of southern New England like eastern Mass and Rhode Island. And then some flood watches up for New Mexico. Let's talk about the southeast today. We will watch for some stronger storms that might get going here in Florida, and we could get some around the coastal regions of Georgia and maybe even the low country of South Carolina too. But I would say Florida is an area to watch for some stronger storms today, especially northern and north central Florida. Some rain entering the picture with this trough. But outside of that, I think the showers and storm action will be very isolated to at times scattered. I think we'll wake up to some Gulf storms down here in the panhandle of Florida tomorrow, and then Alabama too. But closer look at Florida today. Just be careful if you're vacationing down here in Florida. Some of these storms will pack a punch here in central Florida, anywhere from Gainesville up to Jacksonville, points south all the way down to maybe even Miami. So we'll watch for some big storms today. It's always going to be difficult to figure out exactly where they pop up, but I think they will really get going, as early as maybe 3, 4 p.m. So definitely be aware. We could have some pop-up downpours in southern Alabama, the panhandle of Florida also. Up here, the Carolinas, Georgia, and Virginia, definitely some very isolated downpours, not very widespread at all. But you will see them. Atlanta might get a downpour, Asheville, Greenville, Spartanburg, and down here near Orangeburg, you guys could see some storm action, but not a very big storm day, but they will be out there. Now, up here in the Northeast, it's definitely going to be a lot more active, especially for southern New England. You guys could get some big storms around the New York City area, New Jersey, down to Delaware. Also, you guys, southern New England, pretty much everybody has a good chance to see rain. You're already seeing rain out there this morning. These storms could develop and kind of drift their way into New Hampshire. Even southern Vermont could see it. But, all this could eventually make it all the way to the down east areas of Maine. You guys could see some stormy, heavy rain conditions in this entire region today. So definitely expect that. I think it'll be very widespread, especially in southern New England. And a little bit closer look at this morning. They're getting into this afternoon. This is around 4 p.m. this afternoon. Storms everywhere. I don't think the severe element of these storms will really be there, but of course you can't rule out a severe thunderstorm warning or two. But definitely a lot of action up here today, for sure. So definitely a stormy Monday and a rainy Monday, and then by the time you get into late tonight, this action diminishes. A lot of rain out there falling in the south central U.S. That's good news. We always can take the rain in this part of the country. Later this afternoon to this evening, rain will continue to overspread Oklahoma, southern Kansas, even some rain in Missouri, and rain will continue in Illinois. And we will watch down here as the temperatures, the thermodynamics are able to build down here in Texas. And this section right here in north central, kind of west central Texas, some powerful storms could fire up. These could work their way up scale, kind of turn into a line of storms, work their way through central and northern Texas, and eventually try to greet Dallas sometime late tonight. But we think that they're going to weaken. But these could, produce a tornado, some large hail. This is the updraft velocity swath, indicating rotation with a lot of these storms. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to get a tornado, but I would definitely watch out around Lubbock down to Odessa, Midland, or even maybe watch out up in Amarillo, okay? All the way to Abilene. You guys, could get a tornado threat with this. A lot of rain could fall with this too. A little cluster of 2, 3, maybe as much as 4 inches of rain. I would aim towards more of the 1 to 3 inch range right here in Texas. So much needed rain. More rain will fall throughout the day here in western Oklahoma and areas of the panhandle of Texas also. North central U.S., you're dealing with a lot of rain. This rain will overtake most of Michigan, the eastern UP of Michigan, and I think more rain could potentially develop back here in Wisconsin, and then an area of concentrated rain will kind of flow through areas of Minnesota today. But I think it'll be a very soggy day for Michigan, northern Indiana. Some rain will move into eventually into northwest Ohio later tonight. And then we'll get a little bit of some northwest flow out here that will kind of flow throughout Minnesota and northern Wisconsin. It's definitely getting to that time of the year up here where things are really starting to consistently cool down. Summer is really wrapping up. So out west, still got that weak ridging in place, so enough flow. It'll be a very active day in most of New Mexico. Colorado, some more storms could fire up after the morning convection. Could get some action down here in southern areas of California too, where some rain could fall. A little bit of rain here in Nevada. Nothing really severe. Could get a more area of concentrated rain that gets going here in southern Arizona. Certainly central and southern sections of New Mexico. Waking up tomorrow morning to a lot of rain could potentially be falling here in Arizona and New Mexico. So, be mindful of that. Temperatures, doesn't take a rocket scientist to see what this cold front is, right? You got nice, beautiful conditions up here. Now, I wouldn't say beautiful. You do got some rain falling, but as far as temperatures, pretty pleasant. You get south and southeast as boundary. You get into a more moist atmosphere, 80s, and then eventually into the low 90s, low to mid 90s in the Gulf states and in Texas. And, just kind of around an average day here in the southeast. Nothing totally unusual at all. And then out west, cooler temperatures in the plains, pleasant. Nothing too hot, maybe a tick above average, maybe around average. It's always smart to stick to your local people out here. Definitely below average, maybe in the kind of the desert southwest. But that's all I got, guys. Y'all have a great Monday. God bless all y'all, and I'll talk to you this evening.